Hey, what is up, guys? And welcome back to episode 8 of the Anonymous Throwdown podcast. I am joined by Marcel and Dustin, as always. And Jake is out this week because his brother's birthday. So that's a permissible excuse. We'll let this one slide.
For now.
We'll see you bad next time. So thank you guys all for joining. We have a great show lined up for you today. Just a quick reminder at the top of the show, be sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Dustin and I were just looking at the analytics, and we have a lot of views from people that are not subscribed, which is okay. Once again, I'll let this slide this one time, but make sure that you are subscribed and turn on the bell as well. So every Sunday you get notified. We have a new episode of the Anonymous Throwdown podcast every single Sunday. And like the video if you enjoyed at any point. Turn on the bell, subscribe. That's everything. Okay, that's it. So, Dustin, what is our first topic of the day?
Oh man, you're throwing a lot on me right now. Hold on. So there's been a lot of movie news recently. Yes. None of it really good, as has been the running theme for the past 5 months at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. So the first thing I saw on my list was the new Halloween movie that was supposed to come out in a couple months actually got pushed back an entire year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I saw the reactions to that. They're like, "What the fuck? You guys pushed it back again?" Like literally, they didn't want to because they knew they wouldn't make any money like this year if they put it in October. It's not going to make any money.
Is it just me, or was that sneak peek actually pretty good?
It was. 35, I thought it was cheesy as fuck. Like when she started screaming, "Don't go back!" Like they can't hear you. Obviously, I thought her like scream. I was laughing when I saw the teaser because she was just like, "Don't let it burn." I'm like, "Oh my god, okay." It was good.
Like, come on. I wish someone would just come on television and be like, "Come on, the producers aren't going to let that happen because then there wouldn't be another movie." And after this one, there's going to be another one.
Oh no. They filmed it back to back. I think the third one's like.
Oh, did they?
Done. Yeah.
That one's
what's the delay? Why did they delay it for a year? For post or what? But post, I feel like they could do a lot of post from home.
No. So what happened? I'm assuming is no one's gonna see a movie in September. Let's be honest. Most places aren't gonna be open by then. The movie industry is wanting like places like Los Angeles and New York to reopen before they fully release movies in the theaters again. Those are the places most impacted by the outbreak right now. So they really have no interest in putting out movies. I mean, the only thing I can see is maybe drive-through theaters, but I personally despise drive-through theaters.
Really?
I don't like it. No, it's just not my thing. Like right now, do you guys know what the number one movie in America is? I know Coby knows, but Marcel, I'm gonna let you take a guess at what the number one movie in America is right now from drive-through theaters.
Like are they actually still releasing movies though? Because I didn't even know that they were still putting shit out.
No, it's an old movie.
It's an old movie. Okay, let me guess. Blah blah. How old are we talking?
Give him the decade. Give him the decade.
Yeah, give me the
80s.
Fucking Terminator.
That's a good guess.
It's The Empire Strikes Back.
Of course, it's Star Wars. I don't know. I've never seen a Star Wars.
So, Dustin, let me ask you.
I don't know what Star Wars is. Is that a bad thing? Am I going to get flack for that? Not knowing
yes.
What? I don't watch.
Let me ask you, how does that work? So when a drive-in theater plays Empire Strikes Back, can they just like get the disc and like put it in there, or do they have to actually pay 20th Century Fox every time you know what I mean? Like, do they still does 20th Century Fox, and therefore I guess Disney, get paid every time a drive-in theater uses their movie, just like that is the case with all other ticket sales?
I'm pretty sure. If not, it's a copyright breach. I mean,
right.
Disney's pretty hardcore when it comes to their copyright. Let's not forget about the time that they wanted to show a movie of theirs in like a school gymnasium, and they didn't let it happen. And also, this one's really bad, but there was a kid that passed away who really loved Disney stuff. I don't know if you guys remember, Disney made them take all the Disney characters off of its gravestone.
Yeah,
because it was copyright infringement. Yeah,
you're kidding me?
I'm not kidding.
George Lucas, it was like a Spider-Man.
The white slavers. Do you remember when George Lucas called them that?
Okay, but George Lucas is also like George Lucas. He's also not great. I'm not a big George Lucas guy.
What do you mean? Why?
I feel like he ruined Star Wars.
He created it. How can he ruin something he created?
Okay, he's made one good Star Wars movie out of the 4 he's directed. He's made one good one.
Okay, yeah, but he also had a huge role in episode 5 and 6, crafting the entire story for that.
Yeah, but he didn't direct it, and I mean, like, directing's the most important part of a film because that's what brings the script to the screen.
I agree to an extent, but
that's
he's
all
also
on...
he was the role of the idea guy, and he still came up with all those ideas that made the original trilogy incredible.
Yeah, but to me, it's like guys like Marquand and Kirshner are what made Star Wars what it is today.
Right.
A New Hope is like, it's no one's, I mean, it is some people's favorite, but everyone's favorite is Empire. That's like a good chunk of people's favorite Star Wars movie. And George Lucas didn't even direct that one. And I know people like...
My favorite is Attack of the Clones.
That's disgusting.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, keep going.
I know people like the prequels, but as someone who didn't really grow up with the nostalgia of them, I just don't like them. They just aren't good movies, man. Like,
Marcel, what is your relationship with Star Wars?
I just said it. I never watched a Star Wars movie. I don't give a fuck about Star Wars. It's the community that I hate, really.
That's
like, I see the community and I see them on this literally every single time I'm thinking about like getting a Star Wars, like buying the new Star Wars game. I was even gonna like start off with that and just like start there and then just fucking just like try to watch the movies from there on. But then I was just like seeing all the like the toxic fans and like how they talked about the game and how like they're like everybody just talks about like the prequels and everybody talks about these new movies. I'm just like, I don't want to be a part of this because I know once I start watching the movies, I'm gonna eventually be a part of it. Just like with everything else I watch and I'm involved with. So I don't want to get involved with that community.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine because Star Wars fans are the worst, and you can quote me on that. I think I just ruined my chances at ever working on a Disney Star Wars film, but you know what? That's completely fine by me. I do not want to touch that franchise.
Change your name. Just change your name.
Dude, you don't want to work on Star Wars Episode 17 coming fall 2028 in a theater near you, where Rey's great-great-great-grandchild is
like, fighting Palpatine again.
Exactly, yeah, fighting Palpatine, and Palpatine comes back on every other third episode. So episode 9, 12, 15, and 18.
I know the beats of all the movies. It's just I just don't care. I really don't.
I mean, it's so weird. I mean, the thing with Star Wars is like the fans really ruin it. The Star Wars. I mean that's any fandom though. Like DC
like
fans
like
ruin
BVS,
DC.
Dude, I like BVS. Like I actually like almost love BVS. But like whenever I see Snyder fans trying to like legitimately say, "Oh, it's this masterpiece of a movie," it's really not. There's a lot of flaws.
Shout out Coby from 3 years ago.
I know.
You guys remember
really like the toxic ones that were just like, no, you're wrong if you don't like this
but movie. Can I make a clarification point on what Dustin said? I was never toxic like that. I never
you weren't toxic.
Was hashtag release the Snyder cut. I never was this and that. I literally was just like, BVS is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Okay, I will say it probably was toxic in the sense that I probably was like, I would compare it a lot to the MCU, and that's kind of toxic.
Yeah,
just being like, oh, Civil War sucks. I never said Civil War sucks, but I did that.
I said that shit, bro. Oh my god.
I know. So I was deep in that, but I escaped. I still like BVS though, so people can't change that. But I still do like that movie.
It's a good movie.
To me, like BVS and Suicide Squad, and even all the other movies that came out in 2016, comic movies in particular, with like Deadpool and X-Men Apocalypse, even though half those movies are trash, that was like the golden age of comic book movies for me, because that year we had 6 or 7 comic book movies. We had Civil War, we had BVS, we had X-Men Apocalypse, we had Deadpool, and we had one other I can't remember, and Suicide Squad and one other, and it was just like a crazy year. And I remember we were all so excited for BVS, and pretty much for me it was good.
Well, I mean, if you saw the reactions, there's people crying to like Doomsday and shit. It was wild.
Oh, shout out Angry Joe, the big slobbering video game nerd.
Yeah, that's who I mean.
No, that's a different type
of name of. Yeah, no one by the name of Jay. No one's ever cried.
Is Angry Joe? Angry Joe was pissed about Doomsday, and then there were other comic book YouTubers that were getting a lot of benefits from DC Comics. That's all I'll say about that. That for whatever reason, just so happily, coincidentally, loved the Doomsday reveal when everyone else hated it. There was just like these 2 or 3 YouTubers that for some reason loved it, and we were like, "What? That's weird."
Right over it.
One of them with a face that looks like a pizza. He actually cried over it. So yeah, just take that when you will. But I think this brings up a good point. Now that we're already on this topic, and it's not about a DC video game, I am willing to talk about this.
Yeah,
it's
Did Dustin say he's unwilling to talk about a DC video game?
Yes, I don't care about DC video games.
Why? Because you're not good at them, bro. Shut up.
Damn, get wrecked.
I'm gonna watch once I get my fucking online, bro. Once my PlayStation gets back up, I'm gonna beat that Arkham Knight score. We already made that fucking bet.
All right then. So, what Ray Fisher said about Joss Whedon? Did you guys talk about this in your last episode?
No.
So if you guys didn't know, Ray Fisher basically said Joss Whedon, I forget the exact words, but he said he was a horrible director and basically treated everyone on set like trash.
Yeah, he said that he was like incredibly like unprofessional and just I don't know what else he said.
No, more than that. He called him abusive. That was the word he used.
Abusive.
He said that he was abusive on set, which it's tricky. I'm interested to hear what both of you have to think about this. From what I've heard is it's tough because even with Chris Nolan, like it came out this week that he doesn't allow chairs on his set, and
apparently he came out and said that wasn't true.
Oh, did
someone came out? See, someone else came out, and someone his I don't know, someone that works with him and whatnot had to clarify it. But the same, it's kind of weird how at least Chris Nolan clarified it when Joss Whedon was asked about Ray Fisher's comments. He said, "I have no comment. I don't want to talk about that."
So with Chris Nolan.
Yeah, go ahead.
What happened with Chris Nolan was he doesn't allow for actors to just get specially made chairs with their names on it and everything. He wants them to treat everyone on the same playing field. He doesn't want anyone to be seen as special, so he doesn't give anyone chairs. He's like, why waste the prop department's time making a chair,
right?
When we can make a movie.
Yeah,
and that's kind of his mindset. Meanwhile, you have Joss Whedon going up to Gal Gadot and being like, can we put Ezra Miller's face on your tits? And Gal Gadot's like, no. And Ezra's like, yes, please. Because, Ezra's also a despicable human being. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Ezra Miller.
Oh, you're right. I forgot that drama where he beat up that girl.
Yeah, he fucking chokeslammed her in public.
Nut. And yeah, he probably liked the idea. He's like, oh,
yeah, no.
See,
that whole thing is fucked up because it goes with the time, the storyline that Jaws intentionally fucked Snyder's Justice League, by doing as poorly as a job as possible with what he was given, which is it's kind of especially in what one other thing he said was that he was enabled by Jeff Johns, which is
yes. I wanted to talk about that too.
What is it? What do you think that means?
Well, what I think it means is that Jeff Johns never liked Snyder's vision for the DCEU. So he did not like really BVS. He did not like Man of Steel. That's very well documented that he was not a Man of Steel fan. He wanted to make a campier, lighthearted Superman film. So he's not a Snyder fan. And I get that. He's a comic book guy. And Snyder is not a comic book guy. As much as people want to think he is, he's just not. So as a result of that, he's a comic book guy. He's big into the DC canon, and he wants to make movies that are faithful to the DC canon. Now, that's not what Joss Whedon did in Justice League, but that's neither here nor there. Back to the point. What happened is that he didn't like Snyder, and he looked for a way to get him out. And clearly, once Snyder's daughter unfortunately died, they used that more or less as an excuse to get rid of him. That's basically what they used. And they said, well, we really, really think you need to take time off. And I'm sure that Snyder was totally, also was in that mindset, as one would be after losing their child. So that's all understandable. And then he basically used that as an opportunity to get rid of Snyder, bring in Joss Whedon, because he wanted to basically make the DCU movies look like Marvel movies. And so that's exactly what Whedon did with Justice League. It looks and kind of feels like a Marvel movie, and it's really awful. So
well,
I want
Here's the
to
thing
know where
I
the
have to say
reports
about
came in
that.
that I want to know where the reports came in that Snyder chose Whedon.
I
Because that's like
doubt he did.
heavily, I know,
I mean,
but that's like a heavily like I still think that might have been a thing because no one
No
else said
way.
it.
so
I mean,
my
it's probably not, but like it's still like like, that was like the first report that came out. It's just like, yeah, okay, Snyder's out. He handpicked Whedon. That's what the report said.
Oh, also, I have insider information on this Joss Whedon Ray Fisher thing. I'll talk about that later. Go ahead, Dustin.
I was basically gonna say Joss Whedon didn't put the amount of effort that was needed into the movie because he knew for a fact that his name was not going to be front billing. He knew he wasn't going to get the directed by Joss Whedon thing, so he didn't care how the film turned out. It wasn't a film he was even interested in. He was over there jacking off in a corner wanting to make his Batgirl movie
Yeah,
that thank God got canceled because fuck Joss Whedon.
he sucks.
And yeah, Joss Whedon sucks.
He's a
The only
hack.
reason Avengers 1 is good is because Kevin Feige is a god tier producer who knows how to
Yep.
make a fun movie.
Yep.
That's literally it. Avengers Age of Ultron is proof of that because I guarantee what happened there was Kevin Feige was like, I'll let Joss have a little bit more control in this. And that's why Joss put in the stupid fucking Hulk and Black Widow plotline. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
Yep.
that was horrible.
I think you're exactly right, Dustin. That's 100% what happened because the first one was such a huge success, and he basically was like, "Oh, we'll give him the creative reins." And then after that movie, you'll notice that Joss Whedon had a close grip on every movie that came through because he learned his lesson there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now they're kind of doing the same thing with the Russos, but the thing is the Russos are actually competent, and I don't
Right.
think they're like perverts like Joss Whedon is. Then Joss Whedon, wasn't he like a huge outspoken feminist, and it came out that he like cheated on his wife several times?
Oh, so
pretty
basically he's just a typical Hollywood guy?
Yeah.
They all do that, bro. They all virtue signal online about how woke they are and how much they support women. And this is exactly what I heard when I met someone that worked on the Flash, and they told me, they're like, yeah, this Mark Guggenheim, I think is his name. Yeah, he portrays himself as like this fun-loving, like gay guy online, and he says, how much he supports women and this and
Guggenheim
that.
isn't gay. Guggenheim isn't gay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's Berlanti. Yeah, you're thinking of Berlanti. Greg Berlanti.
Berlanti, yeah, Berlanti. Okay, I don't want.
They probably suck each other off anyways. Who the fuck knows?
Okay, you're right. It's Greg Berlanti. I'm sorry. So Greg Berlanti, he, she's saying that he prevents himself or shows himself as being like this really nice, like really progressive guy, and she said he's a raging sexist, like one of the most sexist people you'll ever meet in your life. And that's what they all do. I mean, the same thing I actually saw in response to the tweet about what's his name? Why is his name? Joss Whedon. I saw in response to the fact that Jeff Johns enabled him. A lot of people were saying Jeff Johns used to flirt with me and like hit me up on Twitter DMs when I was 16. I saw people saying that. They were like that he was when they were underage, Jeff Johns would slide in their DMs and flirt with them and get inside. And it's the same thing. They're all like that. Like they all use their power to be massive creeps, basically. And Joss Whedon, I mean, even just seeing the scenes in this movie, like you're saying with Hulk, those scenes were really weird. And then you get to like the Wonder Woman and Flash like laying on her. But like if I were directing that scene, let's say I wrote that and I thought that was really funny that the Flash is laying on her boobs, like, wow, okay, I'm not 9, so I don't think that's funny, but let's say that I did. And then if I went to Gal Gadot and was like, hey, will you do the scene, and she said no, I would just be like, okay, we just won't do it. But he's like, oh, well, I'm determined because I love this scene so much, so I'm gonna get a stunt double.
Yeah, it's not even Gal Gadot. That's why your face is pointing away from the camera the entire time.
There was like a Twitter post of the stunt double who came out and like showed like a bunch of different scenes, like the one where Batman's on the crane and she comes up behind her. That's a stunt double with Gal Gadot's like face inserted, and like a bunch of other scenes, like the one in the Batcave. That's also just a body double with Gal Gadot's face inserted.
I'm sure she was busy at the time because this was like reshoots way later.
Sure,
she was pregnant.
But would you want to be? But would you not at the time of Justice League?
Yeah, she was. When she did the reshoots of Justice League, she was pregnant.
That might be it.
Maybe, but like, was she actually like big when she was doing? Because I don't remember.
No,
She had a bump. She had a bump though,
She
because
had a
they had to
bump,
make
yeah.
a special suit for her.
Yeah.
When she
I was
was
about to say maybe she was like fucking Whedon. I wouldn't want to fucking be there either. You could see like the actual like when Bruce Wayne's like walking up to her, she's not looking at Bruce Wayne, she's looking like far off in the distance.
Yeah, because they basically deep faked her face onto the stunt woman.
Yeah, it's fucking hysterical.
I mean, the last thing I can really say is like, none of this is like confirmed about how all these Hollywood guys act. But the thing is, Hollywood has such a big power dynamic.
Yes.
Where these guys can portray themselves as these fun-loving guys who are great, who produce movies, and they have wives and 5 kids, and then 20 years later it'll turn out that they're like a Harvey Weinstein, and be complete garbage human beings. So that's really the last thing I have to say in terms of like Hollywood and how toxic that culture is. At least on this episode. I'm sure we'll talk about it more next episode and the episode after, and the episode after that. But the thing is, like, Greg Berlanti, none of us personally know him. But the thing about him is it produces all the Flash and like DC Universe shows. He has so much power over those franchises.
Yes.
And he also made that Love, Simon movie a couple years ago, which I heard was pretty good. That was pretty good. So it wouldn't shock me at all if he did come out to be some kind of raging sexist. I could definitely see that happening. Because like we already know Joss Whedon is, and he kind of acts the same way.
Oh, yeah. And they're not all like that. I mean, that's the thing. I think that Zack Snyder is legitimately not that way. I don't have any evidence for that. It's just the vibe I get from him. The same thing with Chris Nolan. I don't think we're going to, in 20 years, there's going to be any crazy revelations about Chris Nolan. And then I look at other directors and I'm like, oh, the guy's a little suspect. Again, that's totally just based off me eyeing them and what I think they look like, which is not that good. But, James Cameron wouldn't surprise me if stuff came out about him, for instance. But someone like, again, it's just a guessing game there.
I mean,
the interesting thing about the Cyborg situation is that Ray Fisher, if we remember, actually supported and was more of a fan of Joss Whedon at first. When the original transition happened, the rumors were that he was a fan of it, and he was not a fan of Zack Snyder. And essentially, which is fine. He's allowed to change his mind. Like, he's allowed to say, I want Joss Whedon. And then when Joss Whedon got to set, he's like, oh, he's a terrible person. So that's fine. But that's just an interesting thing to point out, that, be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was going to say was, we aren't typecasting Hollywood as this place full of monsters. There are seriously good people who work in that industry. Hundreds. It's just there's a small percentage of really bad people who work in Hollywood. And as it turns out, a lot of those guys are the ones in really high power right now. So don't take that as like we're throwing shade at the entirety of the industry, because I want to go into the industry. I know Jake wants to go into the industry. Coby lives in LA, for Christ's sake. I mean, he's surrounded by these people.
I probably want to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we aren't saying everyone who does this job is bad. We're more saying that the people who are very predatory in this industry are the ones who end up making the most money, is what I would say. In a certain way, you have to be predatory to make that much money.
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. The difficult thing is when someone like Greg Berlanti, who has had a few successful shows at CW, and then he gets more power, and then he can do more, and then he can do Riverdale, and then he can reach outside of CW and whatever, and then he is directing movies for WB.
Riverdale is already fucking weird, bro. It's about a bunch of high schoolers, and they're doing a bunch of questionable shit. Even if the actors are older, you're portraying these people as children. It's like...
Well, the point is here's the point that the person I met was making is like, well, this person is in such high regard with the high ups at WB, to cross him or even, point out some of the things that he's doing that are questionable when the higher ups love him so much and he's done so much for them and made so many successful shows. It's a difficult sell, and it's difficult to just be this underling underneath him. And, so it's like exactly like you said. It's the power dynamic. It's the career suicide. And that's why it's actually very surprising that Ray Fisher said what he said about Joss Whedon being abusive. Most of the time, when people have awful experiences like that, they keep it totally to themselves because they don't want to be seen as a quote problem, end quote, as someone that will stir up the pot and make allegations and create drama. You know, sometimes there is that incentive for people that will just basically keep hush and just go along with what's going on. So
Ray said that he was under a non-disclosure agreement, so he said that he couldn't keep saying like what specifically was going on set, but he still, did that, which
and
is
he
like
could get sued for that. He could get sued.
Yeah,
Now the optics would look very bad for Warner Brothers, but it wouldn't surprise me if he got hit with a suit. And certainly you have to think that Warner Brothers will probably never work with him again. Because of that. Just for now, it is a little bit different because Joss Whedon is not like one of WB's love childs. Like WB has a couple people like Chris Nolan and a couple other people that they just absolutely love. They just have a very tight relationship with.
It's like what I'm trying to think of the other ones that come to mind. So I know Chris Nolan's a big one. Todd Phillips is one.
Is James Cameron one?
James Cameron? No.
Who's one?
James Cameron is 20th Century Fox.
There's
Titanic for 20th Century.
Another one's probably Todd Phillips because he made them the Hangover trilogy and Joker made $1 billion. I'm trying to think of who else because they do have a couple other.
There's definitely more of people.
300 WB, 300 Sucker Punch. So Snyder like one of them.
I think 300's legendary though, isn't it?
Maybe. I'm pretty sure.
Clint Eastwood, he does a lot of his movies with WB.
Okay. Oh. Yeah, that's Snyder.
Yeah,
300.
300 is legendary.
Ben Affleck.
Okay.
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck's one, yeah. He did Argo. Mm-hmm. Didn't he do Argo for?
He did Argo, and he did that most recent movie, that basketball movie.
Yeah, that basketball one.
Yeah, that's WB.
He's also Batman for 3 movies.
Of course. Yeah.
Barely 3 movies.
So there are a couple people like that. Like there are people like J.J. Abrams that work with other companies, and then there are people like Chris Nolan that are just basically WB exclusive. I imagine that they probably have an exclusive contract between Snyder and WB. Or excuse me, not Snyder, Chris Nolan and WB.
Perhaps.
But I don't know for sure.
I know Snyder is probably locked in some contract too. Not locked in, but I'm sure he signed a contract because I feel like if he got burned by WB super bad, I don't think he'd have come back to do the Snyder cut. I don't think he got burned super bad. I think it's just the people who worked on his production that got burned super bad. And that's not his fault at all. I mean, he had to deal with a personal tragedy. That's not something he can be blamed for, but it can all be blamed on Joss Whedon, and it can all be blamed on Jeff Johns. It can all be blamed on whoever the other person was that they called out by name. Because didn't they call another guy out? And then
there's another guy.
And didn't that guy like respond and say, "Oh yeah, well he didn't say booyah, so."
Yeah, they said his main problem was that they wanted him to say booyah, but Ray didn't want to say that.
Well,
and that was like the problem. But that's not.
It's like, just cut the fucking line at that point. It's a catchphrase.
Yeah.
It's stupid. I mean, in none of the new Spider-Man movies does he mention anything about, like, great power comes great responsibility, because it's played out. We've all heard it.
Right. What they were trying to do is basically turn the public opinion against them and against Ray and try to say, well, Ray's actually a fraud and he doesn't really want to serve the comic book fans and he's actually a drama queen and he's difficult to work with, this and that. Yeah. But that's totally tangential. Let's say all that is true. That's totally unrelated to the fact that Joss Whedon is allegedly abusive towards other people on set. So that's like a null point. It's totally unrelated.
Yeah. And like Ray Fisher, from what I know, he doesn't have many other credits outside of Cyborg. And the fact that they're trying to like snuff out his career so early on just because he called out an abusive director for being abusive is kind of scummy. It's not necessarily WB that I think is doing it, but it's the other people he called out that are trying to discredit him. I think WB wants to get as far from this situation as possible. Yeah. I feel like they don't want to even mention Justice League if it's not the Snyder version. If it's not Snyder cut, they don't want it. And neither do the 700 million bots on Twitter who spam every post Zack Snyder makes. I see you guys.
Well, and Snyder Cut, all that is an HBO Max play. That's all it is. It's just a ploy to boost HBO Max, which right now came out the gates really slow. Disney Plus came out of the gates pretty hot, and they've been successful. HBO Max has some good shows on it. Like they have a lot of the top, like most popular cable TV shows on it. Like they have Big Bang Theory and a couple of those, and
I
like
actually
shows.
Unsubscribed from mine
Did you?
this month. Yeah.
And why did you do that? Tell us about your experience with it, what you liked, what you didn't like.
I mean, what I did like was they do have a lot of stuff for specific fans of things. So they have like a Looney Tunes section, a Cartoon Network section, a DC section, HBO. They have a whole thing for Spanish-speaking people, and that's awesome. However, on the flip side, if you don't have enough original programming for your service, whether that be exclusive shows, movies, anything like that, you're just gonna fail in today's market. Netflix puts out 200 exclusive movies a year, pretty much.
Right.
Hulu puts out tons. Hulu just had a movie drop today called Palm Springs with Andy Samberg that apparently is like a 9 out of 10 movie.
Oh, really?
What the fuck does HBO Max have besides the Snyder Cut? I'm sorry, no casual person's gonna give a shit about the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
My mom's not gonna care about it. I'm sure none of your moms are going to care about it. I'm sure none of your like non-comic friends are going to be interested. I mean, no one outside of Twitter knows about this really. Yeah. Besides now, if you don't like BVS, what's going to inspire you to spend 4 to 5 hours of your life watching a mini-series version of Justice League? Nothing. This is a ploy to keep people subscribed, and I feel like they should have waited to launch this service. If they had launched, until all that's all like out, I feel like maybe they should. One thing I can say is if they give directors a way to like cut their movies and just put it out on HBO Max, that's awesome. Like I remember David Ayer said some stuff about wanting to do that with Suicide Squad. That may or may not be happening because apparently his stuff's already all shot. There's just visual effects that need to be done. And from what I'm thinking, I mean, I remember when like HBO Max spent $500 million to buy the South Park streaming rights.
They did?
$500 million, yes.
No way.
And the thing is, like, South Park is a huge show. It's a huge show. But I have already seen all of South Park. Why would I spend $15 a month to watch South Park when I can spend that much to buy a season of it on Blu-ray? Or like spend 5 times that amount to get the entire series on Blu-ray. And
yeah, that's a great point. I'm very curious. I think we should actually discuss, if you guys are cool, I'm very curious to discuss the outline of the industry and sort of with all these streaming services competing. I mean, here's the thing. You've got to go back 5 years ago. Who were the main streaming services? Hulu and Netflix. It was Hulu and Netflix, and they basically had the rights to everything. Like you go on Netflix, you go on Hulu, right? And now what's happened is everyone, like every player is trying to get in. Even Apple is trying to get into this industry. Amazon, so everyone is trying. Yeah, and they're all buying out the streaming rights for certain things, right? And I'm just trying to think, like, how does that work when companies are buying exclusive streaming rights to these shows, and then what happened is that Hulu and Netflix were supposed to be the cable cutters. They were supposed to combat cable because cable, we spend hundreds of dollars a month and, we basically get all the shows we want. But with Hulu and Netflix, the idea is like, oh, you pay $15 a month or $20 a month, whatever, between both, and you get everything. You get, every movie you could want to see. You get a bunch of TV shows, all that. And now what's happened is you have in comes Apple, in comes HBO Max, in comes all of these streaming platforms. They're all dividing up rights ownerships amongst themselves. And it's almost to a cable level where you need to buy, okay, I need to spend $15 on Disney Plus. I need to spend $15 on HBO Max and Netflix and Hulu and all these other ones. And it's am I diagnosing this right? I mean, do you guys also agree that it's a big problem with how many streaming services there are? How can anyone possibly afford all of these?
It's basically another cable situation.
Exactly. It's basically cable is coming back in just a totally different form because all of these companies are trying to get a piece of the pie, and it's basically like they're all cable networks again, and we all need to pay for each cable network. That's all it is.
But now we're just like paying less for like different services of what cable we want to get, like instead of just paying like a larger amount. It's weird. I mean, I definitely don't pay like it when Justice League comes out. I'm not gonna try at all to like pay for any of that. I'm just gonna wait until the entire thing is out, do the week trial, watch Justice League, and then cancel my shit. I'm not like there's nothing else on HBO Max I want to watch. So, if I have like something that I want to watch on a certain service, that's basically what I would do. But like if I don't know, I just don't think it's really. At some point, people need to realize that it's not worth that type of money, like to see these shows or to, it's just not worth it to buy all of these. Just get the ones that you want, and then just dump the rest.
Also, breaking news that is not entertainment related, just overall like world health related. New York actually just had a 0 death day for the first time since March.
Wow.
Which is
today or yesterday? Yesterday.
It was probably yesterday, yeah. But that's still a huge step. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's good. I'm just very
good. It's surging over here in Cali as it's kind of because North Carolina or excuse me, North Carolina. Getting fucked. Yeah, New York had its peak like 2-3 months ago, and it seems like it's getting better. And here it's surging though.
No, Arizona is probably like the worst, I think, out of all of the states. It's fucked. Yeah, we didn't do anything. Yeah, we fucked up.
I mean, the only states I hear really getting it bad are like New York, California, Texas, California. I never really hear Arizona get brought up there.
No, I mean, Arizona's definitely. I'm pretty sure Arizona's the number one state of like the worst cases.
And it's also a level of proportion. It's a level of proportion because Arizona is smaller than all those states you mentioned, like New York and California and Texas. So, but if they have a higher proportion, like if they have a bunch of people that have it, that's an issue because there's not that many people in the state relative to California, which has 55 million or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. Maybe 40 million. I don't know.
And like, I know Ohio's getting hit bad right now.
Yeah.
Most places are getting hit kind of bad, but we might be on a downturn, which is pretty good news. Yep, sorry for cutting you off. I just wanted to bring that up. I just saw it on my trending page. I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah. So when you look at the charts and shit, like California, Florida, Texas, and Arizona are like the only ones that go up. Like right now, those are the only ones that are like upwards in terms of like maybe New Jersey's going up a little bit, Illinois, but New York's going down. Yeah, it sucks. Like here, everything, every business is just fucking dead. Nobody's really going out, but like people are still going out. It's so weird how people are fucking getting this shit. Wasn't there a new report that said like it actually can transmit through the air indoors?
It's basically an aerosol, but it's people are overblowing that a little bit.
I don't know what I saw.
It's basically like if you sneeze, then the particles from your sneeze can travel a pretty good distance across the room and affect someone else.
Yeah, we already knew that though. It's just, I wouldn't say fear mongering, but a lot of people learned the term aerosol and thought of like, oh, if I breathe, it'll travel all over. No, what you breathe goes up into the air, I believe. Like it goes upwards. If you're outdoors, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Unless you sneeze in someone's face, then you probably have to worry about that. But yeah, we are at the point now where we pretty much have a solid grasp of what it is.
Yeah.
Because I remember when it happened, I mean, I recently edited footage of my vacation in New York just for a little fun project. And it was like March 10th, 11th, or 12th. It was one of those days. And like Corona was very much a thing at the time. We knew what it was. We knew it was out, but we didn't know how bad. But at that time, I forget if it was like the WHO or if it was somewhere else, said that like masks weren't necessary. Masks didn't help anything. And that's because we understood so little about it at the time, where we actually thought that masks didn't help.
It's actually a little more nefarious than that. What happened was the Surgeon General of the U.S. said that not to use masks, like you said. However, the reason why, and Dr. Fauci, the head of the coronavirus task force, later came forward and said the reason that we said that was because we were worried about a mass shortage. So when the COVID was happening, people were rushing to the stores, buying toilet paper and also buying all the masks. And what they were worried about is that the nurses and doctors were not going to have enough masks, which is a legitimate concern, because if they don't have masks, then basically the entire hospital just goes down in flames. Like everyone, if the doctors have COVID and they're interacting with hundreds of patients a day, then you're fucked. Like it's GG. So you understand that and why they did that, but also I think it ruined public trust, because it is not what they said is not true. And the Surgeon General, he still has a tweet up that says masks do not help in mitigating the spread of COVID-19, which is a lie. There's not like a ton of research, but I mean, logically speaking, it doesn't seem logical. I'm pretty certain that masks do help, and that's what they're saying now. But it was kind of a little scummy for them to be like, well, the masks don't work. And then Dr. Fauci was like, well, it's just because we didn't have enough and we were worried about the shortage. But you could have said they do work, but we need them. But I think what they're thinking was, if they said that, then people would still rush to the store to buy the masks. So
yeah. Who's the Surgeon General of the United States?
His name is Jerome Adams.
What does he do?
Jerome, the Surgeon General?
I know what he does, but like, was he a doctor before he did any of this?
Yeah, usually the Surgeon General is a MD, so they have like a medical degree, but they also typically were in the military. Like, and Jerome Adams is part of that. So he was an
anesthesiologist.
Yes,
is his field, and he was a vice admiral in the U.S. Public Health Commission.
Yeah,
and he was appointed by the president in June of 2017, and I have to say he hasn't done a great job.
I mean,
let's be fair. He didn't really sign up for 2 years into his tenure to face a global health crisis. None of them did.
Right.
But lying about the mask thing, that's pretty bad.
It was.
That's pretty bad on his part. And I don't know if I blame Fauci entirely, because isn't his main job is that he just basically says what the Surgeon General says, and he just says it to the public pretty much?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's an advisor. Dr. Fauci is a public health advisor, and he's in charge of the NIAID, the National Institute of Autoimmune and Infectious Diseases. So he's in charge of the U.S., and they all kind of have different things that they do. As I said, the Surgeon General is a little bit more broad. The Surgeon General is a little bit more like programs in schools of like how to eat healthy and like stuff like that. So, the NIAID, which Dr. Fauci is in charge of, is a little bit more specific. And then, like you said, I wouldn't really place blame on any one person, and they're all like very well qualified and very smart individuals, obviously. But I think that they clearly, it's pretty clear that they kind of risked public trust in saying what they said about the masks. And now that's ammunition that I think can be used by people to not trust future things that they say. Because like, well, they were wrong about the masks. What else are they going to be wrong about? I also think that the World Health Organization has also not been great about that. And they have kind of, also, if you remember, the World Health Organization said at the beginning that the virus is not transmissible in the air at all. They said that in like March. That was totally wrong. It's like, so then that creates this feeling where it's like, well, if they were wrong about that, what else are they wrong about? And then it's like, maybe the virus actually turns us into zombies. And then there's, you get all these wacky conspiracy theories.
And like, and I've seen
done.
It's like recently what I've seen is, we're going to try not to get into the political aspects of this whole debate, because that's not really what I'm interested in personally. But so I live in Ohio. And our governor is a guy named Mike DeWine. I've met him. Decent guy.
Really?
Yeah.
You've met him?
Yeah.
That's cool.
But he's kind of a short guy, which I found funny. But we
Right.
So what happened with him was he had a health advisor named Dr. Acton, and she was leading him through all these really smart decisions in terms of like closing down super early, trying to get the reopening in a way to where everyone can go back to work super healthy and like get the economy reopened. But what happened was there were people protesting her because I wouldn't say she made masks like necessary, but she definitely strongly suggested that you wear a mask if you're outside.
Right.
And what they did was a lot of people went to her house with assault rifles and protested outside of her house. And she actually stepped down, like, not long after that. And I can tell you, ever since then, he's been downhill in his, like, in the ways he's handling this. One thing I have noticed from him specifically is there are a few towns in Ohio that require a mask outside now. If you don't wear a mask, you can get a fine. It's like an $85 fine. You aren't going to get, like, your life ruined or anything. But it's just to urge people to get a mask on if they have to go outside. So what he does
anywhere outside, or just like just walk around, or just like,
I'm pretty sure if you're by no one, it doesn't matter. But if you're in like a heavily populated area, you need to wear a mask, or else you're getting a fine. And
I feel like that should be mandatory everywhere.
See, the thing with that is that's kind of a hard thing to institute. I mean, there are arguments to be had in terms of like individual freedoms, but I feel as of right now,
you're risking other people's lives. That your freedom doesn't matter when other people's lives are at risk. It really doesn't, because now you're just like trying to impact other people's freedom, which you're taking away their life. You're taking away their freedom to live.
And well, what I was gonna say was like Mike DeWine. He's a right governor. He's Republican. He has actually been pretty. He hasn't fallen in line with a lot of his compatriots, a lot of his fellow Republican governors. He's been very progressive, which is kind of weird for him. And to some it may be good, some it may be bad. We aren't here for that. It's this or that. But one thing I noticed is that when some of these towns said that you need to have a mask to go outside, he tweeted something that was like, "Man, I love that these areas are making it mandatory." It's like, well, if you love it, you'd make it statewide. But the thing is if he did that, he would lose so many voters.
Yeah, no,
it would be not funny. And I think that brings the issue of like how many of these people are handling this a certain way just to get reelected or come back in the near future, be able to make a career off this stuff. It's a lot.
It's hard to talk about it without being political, because it is inherently political when the public is having to we're relying on the states and of course the federal government to try to control this a little bit. But
I personally think that something like this shouldn't be inherently political, just because it is something like people's lives. There's a certain point when politics to me just becomes unnecessary, because let's face it, the U.S. for the past 50, 60 years has been in this rut of like, oh, we elect one president of the left side or the right side. They don't change much. It never changes much. Like,
true.
It's one of those things where the things that really matter are these small scale politicians. Your mayors, your governors, your senators. The president doesn't matter. He does in some instances, but he really doesn't have that much power if you really think about it. He's just basically our representative in terms of the world stage. He can't, like, say if Trump had, like, some vendetta against gay people, which I don't think he does, he couldn't go out tomorrow and be like, that's it, gay marriage, not happening anymore. He doesn't have that power. So, but, like, the states individually could have that power. He can't do anything on a statewide level, and I think that's why the COVID response has fallen to the states. But it's just a lot of these governors are not smart enough to handle this. Like the guy from Florida, I don't know his name, but I know he's handling it pretty bad. The guy from Texas is handling it pretty bad. The guy from Nevada, I mean, he opened Las Vegas up like a month and a half ago. And that being the hotspot.
Well, I think that... Go ahead, Marcel.
You go ahead, because you haven't talked about it.
I was just going to say, I think that you're spot on about it's difficult to tell what people really believe. And in the case of the Ohio governor, I haven't heard the situation about it. It sounds to me like he is in favor of more stringent restrictions on masks and that type of thing. But he is subservient to the people that elected him, and if his base that elected him and will inevitably re-elect him. So when you're a politician, you're really subservient to the people that elected you. I've seen that with a lot of politicians that kind of change positions. For instance, Rand Paul of Kentucky. Rand Paul, who ran for president, notoriously was very, very anti-Trump, anti-Trump, because he's more a libertarian and Trump is more of like a big government Republican, I guess you could say. But Rand Paul is a very, very libertarian, small government conservative. So even though they're both Republicans, they're kind of on the complete opposite spectrum of what a Republican can be, right? But Rand Paul is from Kentucky, which is a super MAGA state, one of the most pro-MAGA Trump states. So now all of a sudden, he's a little bit more like it's interesting how it happens. But if you're from that state and that's the only state you can be elected senator of, like you can't just change states and be like, oh, I'm a senator from Wyoming now. So, you have to basically adapt. And I think you make a great point. We don't really know what they think. The governors, even a governor that could be from a very, very red state, he might basically just make it seem as though he's against the masks and the government mandates, but he might actually be in favor of them. He just says that to get reelected. I mean, that's why you can't really trust politicians that much. So
exactly. And I mean, I know, like, Coby, you're into politics a lot. I actually used to be, but I'm not so much anymore. The political system in America right now is probably the worst it's been in over 100 years, just in terms of the public trust of the government, how the government's handling certain things. I mean, public trust in the government has gone down considerably in the past few years, and that's not like the president's fault. That's just the population as a whole. We're all reaching this boiling point. And
okay, let me tell you this. I don't want to go too deep into the politics, and I'm gonna pick on Nancy Pelosi, but not because she's a Democrat or what party she's in. This is commonplace in Washington, D.C. Nancy Pelosi has been in Congress for like 45 years. She's like 9,000 years old. She's the Speaker of the House. Okay. Her net worth is over $100 million. You know how much you make in Congress? Like 150 grand a year. Maybe because she's the Speaker of the House, she makes 200 grand a year. Her net worth is over $100 million. Where does that money come from? I mean, and it's like, it's the swamp, dude. It is like, lobbying. Again, I don't mean to go too big into politics, but it's the lobbying and it's all that. And that's on both sides of the political aisle. It's a huge problem. It's the system. And that's why people don't trust, because you look at someone like Nancy Pelosi, you're just like, and it's the same thing with Hillary Clinton too, and other people. I mean, it's, again, I'm just picking on two Democrats, but it's both sides of the political aisle. Yeah. But I'm just like, how do you have that much money? That's kind of sketchy, It's like,
and like the president's
take on that,
and like the president's kind of the same way. He's being a little sketchy right now. He has some sketchy moments.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't he have to release he has to release his tax?
He doesn't have to publicly, but he does have to release it to the people who want to see it, i.e. the governors.
Yeah, the New York governors or whatever.
But the thing with that is like, he could just be wanting the privacy of that. Who knows if it's necessarily anything bad. But like, it's funny what you're saying about the re-election. Okay, let me just say this outright. I'm not a Trump supporter. I may sound like one right now, but I'm not.
Both sides. I hate Joe Biden. I hate Trump. I hate Hillary. I feel like Bernie could have been good, but like that's mainly just like because it would have been just like
the thing with Bernie.
Nice. It just would have been nice.
The thing with Bernie is that he was so not big government. He's a very small government guy. He had no chance at winning over the.
I mean that's the problem. Is that the Democrats would always fuck him over every other time, and
they fucked him over both times, honestly. In 2016, if you remember, Hillary Clinton got the debate questions like a couple of weeks before before that one debate, and then this year it was egregious what they did to this man. Literally, they told Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and one other kind of like moderate centrist Democrat, and they're like, hey, can you guys like all drop out today? And then if so, they made I guarantee you, I know politics. I know what happened. They went to them and said, hey, Amy, hey, Pete, you get a cabinet position if you drop out today. And that's what they did. So they dropped out. So all the other centrist Democrats all were forced to vote Biden. And they basically, because before it was kind of divided, like in quarters of like who liked Amy, who liked Pete, who liked Joe, and then like I said, there's Kamala Harris was the other one.
Bloomberg.
Yeah. So all of the, and then they totally obliterate, like, oh my god,
they ruined any chance.
100%.
They fucked him over. It's so weird why they do that too, because it seems like out of everybody, he would have a pretty good chance against Trump. Like I would even say, like, if he won against Hillary in 2016, that Bernie probably would be the president. Like it just seems like that would have been a likely chance for them to get him out of there.
Bernie and Trump
he's too left for them. Like the centrist Democrats, they don't want that.
Bernie is the same coin as Trump. They're just two different sides.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like, that's what it's mainly like, again, the president doesn't have that much power. It's mainly like how they represent America. And I feel like Bernie would have been a better choice for that. But
if he could even get on the plane, because he was also like 80 billion years old, but that's besides the point. I really wanted someone like
the same age as Trump.
I used to be a Republican, just for conversation's sake, like 5 years ago. I actually was a Marco Rubio guy, and if you guys remember the 2016 race, it was so toxic. I think it was like Lion Ted. And Ted Cruz is now the biggest Trump bootlicker there is. And like Mike Bloomberg paid $500 million just to be called Mini Mike on stage and kicked off. That shit's hilarious.
No, the most egregious one was Ted Cruz, because Donald Trump accused Ted Cruz of being the Zodiac killer, and then he also accused him of he said something really, really mean about his wife, like called her ugly or fat or something.
And he also said his dad helped in the JFK assassination.
Yeah. What? How do you? Yeah, that was just the most wild accusation. Anyway, Bernie Sanders is 78, and Donald Trump. Yeah, the thing I will say about Bernie Sanders, so he is old as shit, but he's cognitively much more there than Joe Biden. Even if Joe Biden's age, he's 77. So Bernie is older than Joe, but cognitively, in my opinion, it's pretty clear that Bernie is 100% like all there. Joe Biden, I'm a little concerned about homeboy Biden. I'm not so sure about him. Now.
He's getting to the point where it's just like, you should be in the White House. You should be in an old folks' house. That's the difference.
I saw an ad. It was a political ad, but it was like, oh no, it was a pro Kanye West ad. So what the ad said was basically like, here are the men that you can elect, and it was like some dumb Trump quote. There are like 50 billion of them to choose from. Some dumb Biden quote. Again, there's like 50 billion to choose from. But Biden's was specifically the one where he's like, we want poor kids to have the same rights as white kids.
Yeah.
Which is something.
I think that was a quote that he said. That's a quote.
That's exactly what he said. Yeah.
He said things like that. He has a history of, touching little girls, which I always thought was kind of.
Oh my God, yeah.
And like, okay, let's not just seem like we're dogpiling Biden. Trump has also said some very suspect shit.
He literally said that you can rape women if you're famous in 2004.
Okay.
How many times say that on the bus? Pretty much.
He literally said you can rape women if you're famous.
How many times has he said something where he calls his daughter sexy? Pretty much. One too many times.
Oh my God.
Look at her tits. Her tits are the greatest. You see what my wife gave to her? Look at her tits. They're incredible. Perfect.
Just if you weren't my daughter.
You didn't even need to pay for them. They're just natural. Wow.
But then again, I did pay for them.
Like, you have a good Trump impression. That was good.
Oh man, you should hear my Obama impression. Oh man. Not again.
Your Obama impression's really good.
Now just get that Biden impression and like just say a bunch of really weird half racist
my
shit.
Leg hair stands up in the. He doesn't have that accent, but he remember that one time where he told the story. He's like
about the black kids in the pool.
Yeah. You tell the school. He's like, these black kids were sitting on my lap and my leg hair. It's blonde in the sun, and I push it down on my leg, and little kids love it on my leg. They were like, "What?"
I'm not gonna lie, Biden. Like, I'm not a Trump guy, and the thing with Biden is like both of them say pretty outlandish shit. Half the time, I don't think Biden even knows what he's talking about. I don't know which is scarier: the one who knows what he's talking about and still says some really dumb shit, or the one who just doesn't have any cognitive like ability to talk and he says dumb shit. They're both scary.
I feel like Biden tries to think about what he's saying before he says it, kind of like Obama, but then he just doesn't. He can't come up with the words.
Well,
And
the
then
thing
when
is-
Trump says shit, he has what he has in his head, but he just has this personality where he wants to fucking make everything so much extra that he just goes that extra step and says some shit that's so outlandish for the sake of it,
I think
just
my
to make his
favorite,
fucking crowd laugh.
my favorite one he did was it was like it was a backstage photo of him giving a speech, and he crossed out Corona on his speech thing, and he put it in all caps and Sharpie Chinese.
No, like it was like a behind the scenes photo. Like someone like took a picture behind him, and you could just see like the one thing that he crossed out was COVID, and it was just China right over it. And it's like, why? Why'd you do that?
Because he knows what to say that'll get his base riled up and happy and excited, and that's
and you also get news play and media attention off of it.
yeah,
as well.
and like it's not even one of those things where it's like, oh, all Trump supporters are bad. They're not. I've met some decent
a lot
ones.
of them are stupid though. This is like a lot of not a lot of them are stupid, but I've met a lot of fucking Trump supporters that just say some stupid shit and like reasonings for voting for him. It's just like that's not a good reason to vote for somebody.
I'd say if you want to vote for him, point out his economic policies, point out his trade policies with other countries. That those are what I wouldn't say he's doing a great job, but he's doing a pretty decent job at those. He did a pretty decent job at the Dow Jones thing where he brought that up pretty good after the COVID crash. Granted, that's not permanent and that probably won't stay.
Yep.
But he's definitely, I'd say he's the worst president in my lifetime. But then again, I've only been cognitive for like 2 presidents, so that's not really my opinion. Like I really don't think that I'm like the best voice on politics. I mean, in my lifetime, I can only really remember Bush, Obama, and Obama was all throughout my high school years. So, and like we were all born during Bill Clinton. None of us know what the fuck Bill Clinton did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Besides Monica Lewinsky.
So the thing about Joe Biden that is just going to be interesting, if you remember from history class, Edith Wilson, Woodrow Wilson's wife, took over a lot of responsibility of the country for about 1 year and 5 months. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. Woodrow Wilson was the president during World War I. So he had a stroke, and after the First World War in 1919, I think it was, and she was kind of like, she says that she wasn't the acting president, but in many ways she kind of was. Like she organized a lot of meetings and she took over a lot of responsibility because he was recovering from a very serious stroke. So he was totally out of it. I say that to say I think it's going to be kind of similar to Joe Biden. Not that it'll necessarily be Jill, his wife, running the scene, but there's going to be like puppets kind of behind him, like his Secretary of State and his Chief of Staff and these other people. Exactly. His advisors are going to have a very, very substantial role in running the country while he is more or less kind of a figurehead. Because he's not all there. I mean, say what you will about him, whether you like him or don't like him. And it's actually very tragic because, you know, he's someone that's been in politics for many, many years. He ran for president all the way back in 1988. So he's been trying to be president for a very long time. And he is finally... that's a good question. I think a lot of what people think is that he basically picked a Southern white guy to be his VP to appease Southern white Democrats. And that does make sense. That seems probably pretty likely because he is from the South. I think Joe Biden is from, where is he from?
Missouri? Is he from Missouri?
Joe Biden, home state. Oh, he's from, I think he currently lives in Delaware.
He was born in Pennsylvania.
Born in Pennsylvania. Yeah, interesting.
Okay. Wow.
And then Obama was from Chicago. He lived in Chicago like his whole life.
He was born in Hawaii, raised in Chicago.
That's right. Raised in Chicago. Yeah.
Because, you know, what the kids know today as the release the tax documents Trump, back like 10 years ago, it was released the birth certificate Obama.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember that being
I
everywhere.
I forget about that, yeah.
And then one
George
day, like,
Bush.
he was like, fuck it. He put it out. And like George Bush's whole thing was basically that he just didn't do anything. He started the war and dipped.
This guy. George Bush got kind of fucked because it was 1 year into his presidency in 2001. And the thing is everyone looks back on those wars like the Iraq War and everything we've done in the Middle East with great disdain. But after 9/11, everyone, like public polling, I forget the exact numbers. It was incredibly
a lot.
high. Everyone supported going into the Middle East because they're like, kill these fuckers that took down 9/11.
It's like
until
until their cousin goes to like Iraq and gets their leg blown off with an IED.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like they realize how bad war really is. Because back then that's when patriotism was at an all-time high. That's when the last true spike of American patriotism happened, was after 9/11. Because if you remember, like, there was a thing where France didn't support us going to war with that country. Because, looking back, it wasn't the smartest choice.
Right.
It cost a lot of carnage, but France was like, we don't really support that decision. They tried to rename French fries in America to Freedom Fries. That's not a joke. In Capitol Hill, in their cafe, it was Freedom Fries for a few years because they didn't want to have French like labels on it because the French didn't like support it.
Politically motivated renaming French fries in the United States. The term was born in 2003 when the Republican chairman of Committee of House Administration, Bob Ney, renamed them on the congressional cafeterias.
Yeah, so on all the congressional cafeterias, they named them Freedom Fries because we were pissed at France because they didn't support us in some bullshit war. And like, granted, America hasn't had a war since World War II that has been totally worth it for us. We have Vietnam, which was a huge waste of time. We have Desert Storm, and like, this isn't any disrespect to any veterans. Veterans are all great, like, but it's not your fault. It's your higher ups' faults. It's your generals. It's your commanders or whatever. It's like the Gulf War was a gas war. We fought there to get gas, and then we had the War on Terror, which I think had a good message at first, but then it really just. Well, because
it's tricky because the War on Terror, like killing terrorists, it's typically a pretty good thing. The thing about those terrorists too is that they wreak havoc on the area that they're in. Like the reason Iraq and Afghanistan and these other countries have not progressed in the same way that India and China and other countries in that half of in the Eastern Hemisphere have is because of people that are just regressive. They're terrorists, and it's like they're being obviously unnecessarily blowing people up, but it's just a huge problem for that area as it's trying to develop, and it's why it hasn't developed in the same way that parts of Asia have. And so the US, I think, has pretty noble intentions in that, but it creates a lot of issues because inevitably when you're waging that war, civilians unfortunately will die as a part of that. And
I mean, it's a new war zone too, so it's
it is. And imagine, like, you have to put yourself in those shoes. So let's say that even if you live in that country and you don't like Al Qaeda and you don't like all of that stuff going on, but then the U.S. in fighting that war against Al Qaeda and all the other terrorists, they accidentally kill your mom in a drone strike, and
that's just going to convert you.
And then you hate America just as much as Al Qaeda does at that point because you're like, wow, and it creates this cycle where it's not really solving the problem, even though you can't kill them because then you're also creating people that were genuinely not going to be like that, and you sort of set them on another. Actually, it kind of parallels things from The Last of Us too. But anyways,
that's what I was about to say. Actually, like it's one of those things where terrorists are bad, but say you live in Iran, Afghanistan, somewhere, and while you're out doing something, America drone strikes your village, killing most of the people but also getting the small, sector of terrorists. You're not going to like America from that point out. Even though you might understand, you won't like them just for the fact that they basically ruined your life as it was.
You might support the war effort against that group, but they still, you still are not going to view them favorably. Certainly, especially if you know the people that they,
Yeah.
So, I think you're right.
That's why it's a tricky situation because, we had a reason to go there. We had no reason to stay. We had no reason to stay as long as we did, other than the fact that it was just to swing our big American dick around and intimidate other countries. I mean,
how well did Obama do in trying to get out of there after Bush?
He didn't do good.
Weird because I remember after Osama got fucking killed, that would have been some type of turning point, but it didn't really feel like it was a turning point. It felt like it got worse after that.
what happened was Obama was like, I think he's leading in terms of like drone deaths. Like he was like the drone strike president because he would always send these unarmed craft out to blow up these places. And like, again, it's not necessarily his decision. It's whoever he gave,
Permission.
commander of the military. But the thing is, he knows about all these decisions. He has to sign off on them.
Yes, and even Trump, if you remember, Trump was talking huge game about pulling out of Iraq, pulling out of Afghanistan. We're not pulled out. We're still
eradicating ISIS.
Presidents have been talking about this for decades, getting out of the Middle East. The problem is they're consults of these people that are at the top of the military. Kind of the same thing we're talking about with the politicians. I'm not implying that they're evil, but it's more just that when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. That's the saying for doctors. And the same thing applies to the U.S. And what that saying means is that if you perform a specific function, if you're really good at being in the military, then you kind of view the military as the solution to everything. It's the same reason with a doctor. If you're a surgeon, surgeons tend to over-prescribe surgery because when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. You view everything as the same lens. We can solve this problem with this. So when you ask a military general that has been in the military his whole life and he's all involved in the military, his solution to a lot of problems might be with military intervention. And I think that's a lot of what they see is that the top advisors in the military, national defense, and that type of thing, they just tend to have a little bit too much of a proclivity to have that as a response to any problem of just like, well, what if we send in American troops? That'll like solve the problem. But it's like maybe there are other things that could work better. I don't know. Also, I have to use the restroom, but keep going. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
All right. Sounds good. Let me see what I was going to talk about. Like a few months after Trump got into office, he actually dropped a Moab.
Yeah, I remember. That's the last time I heard about like terror. I was going to mention that. That's the last time I heard about like terrorists when he did that to the bunker.
Yeah, and I want to get the specific details right because this is something I don't want to flub up. I'm not trying to talk shit on anyone in specific. So it was first on CNN, U.S. drops largest non-nuclear bomb, and it was in Afghanistan. Now, let me see. It was a GBU-43, which is a Moab, massive ordnance air blast bomb, or mother of all bombs. And it was dropped 7:32 local time. It was a 30-foot long bomb that weighed 21,600 pounds. It was GPS guided. Jesus. And the president called it another successful job. Yet he was also campaigning for like pulling all the troops out of these countries and to stop the aggressions that we're doing. Yeah. Because really we're making the problem worse instead of better. But instead of doing that, he's like, well, why don't I just drop the largest non-nuclear bomb that we have ever dropped?
I never heard reports of like Obama or Bush doing that. I never saw anybody try to drop a Moab on a terrorist before.
Because Bush was just like, oh, I'll let the soldiers deal with it. Obama was more like, I'll let the robots deal with it.
Yeah, and fucking Trump's like, let me drop the non-nuclear bombs on them. That'll do it.
Yeah, and it's like the reason why Truman dropped the A-bomb. He didn't drop it for casualties. He dropped it to send a message, and that's what Trump was trying to do with this Moab that he sent in April 2017. Yeah. But the thing is, you can't make a move that big and that large that early on into your career. I mean, Truman was only president for about a month at that point after Roosevelt died. Right. But the tensions, and I think it was Japan, and I think Coby might know this. He might correct me if I'm wrong, but
I might know it too.
I do know that the German war effort was done by like April.
Yeah. It was Japan. Japan was the one being the aggressors at that point. And Germany was sending with Italy.
If you ever know why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, I won't say the reason was good, but if a country did it to us, we would have retaliated the same kind of way. Maybe not that way, but the reason why Japan attacked us in World War II was because we did stuff with their fuel. I think we cut off a lot of their, we put sanctions on their fuel, and we cut off 80% of their fuel.
It was a dumb decision. They injected, they put us into that war that basically turned the tide in many ways.
Well, because it was basically Nazis were like, okay, Japan, we're about to win this. Just don't piss off the U.S.
Feeling stupid, please.
Just don't piss off the U.S. They're the one thing we don't want to have coming after us. And then Japan was like, okay, well, I'm going to fly a bunch of Zeros into their warships in Hawaii. in Nazi Germany and Hitler were just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, the only thing I will say, Dustin, is that stuff is very common in geopolitics, like tariffs with Iran, and like there have been a lot of countries even this year with China where we hike tariffs on their imports. We've done it with China, we've done it with Iran, we've done it with Russia and other countries. So that stuff is pretty common, like disputes over fuel and that type of stuff. What they did was definitely very unprecedented. I know you weren't. I know what you were saying, and I know you weren't saying that it was justified. You clarified that. But their response definitely was very surprising to a lot of Americans. And then they even said the funniest thing is when their general, he came out like 2 days after and said that he's like, we woke a sleeping giant. They kind of just knew they were fucked as soon as the U.S. got involved, because they were like, oh shit. And then the next day spoke before Congress, and then they like turned like car manufacturing factories into like tank factories, and then all the women were building tank factories, and then we shipped over like hundreds of thousands of like eager 19-year-olds, and then they lost the war like 2 years later. So GG. No, it was
like 9/11, where like it kind of unified America, and it's just like, we want to go over this now. We want to fucking do this shit.
As a country that's very divided, the U.S. is, I gotta say, I wouldn't say we're one of the most patriotic, but we are very divided in some ways. But if we got attacked, I feel like we all unite when we're
usually
attacked.
Come together. Yeah, we usually come together and try to.
It happened in 9/11. It happened in World War I. It happened in World War II. I mean, in World War II, it was more like Japan attacked us, so let's develop this multi-billion-dollar bomb and just completely decimate 2 cities and then get out of the war.
It was so weird though, because we didn't want to be in that war. We were just like, no, you guys could deal with that on your own. Sorry,
dude. I miss the days. when the U.S. didn't want to be in wars. Like we were we totally were just on our own island here in the northern hemisphere, and we still were in wars, but it was only because we got dragged into them with World War. So literally, look at the history of wars in our country. The first 2 wars we got attacked because we were just like colonists or whatever. Like we were just like chilling in our colonies in like the 1790s, and then the Brits came, and then they came again in 1812 for a couple years, and they were just being assholes and wouldn't leave us alone. That's all it was. And then we pretty much didn't have anything for a long time. And then World War I, we were like, no, we do not want anything to do with this. Everyone was saying that about World War I. And then Germany was like sending letters to Mexico, and they were like, hey, tell the U.S. that we're going to attack them. And like with the Zimmerman note and all this shit. And it was like, wait, what? And then with World War II, we said the same thing. The Zimmerman note, that's what Germany, they wanted to invade the U.S. They wanted Mexico to invade the U.S. through the Mexican border. And that's basically what got us into the U.S. And it was a Zimmerman note. The Zimmerman note, it was from Germany, and the Axis powers were trying to invade the U.S. to instigate us to get into the war. And then we didn't want to be in that war, and we did. And then in World War II, we didn't want to be in World War II either. We explicitly said we don't want to do anything involved with Europe. And then we got bombed, and then we did that. And then after World War II, then we did what's called the Marshall Plan, where we spent millions of dollars rebuilding Europe, and we basically, and then we set up the UN. And then we basically were kind of like, all right, we're going to be the police of the world now, because we just saved the world. And by getting in this war, because the U.S. pretty much twice, but definitely the second time, the Nazis were about to like run that shit. And with the UN, it obviously wasn't anything nefarious, but then they basically just established a system where we were like the top dogs. And then anything else that happened wrong in the world, for whatever reason, American foreign policy has just been like, oh, we're not cool with that. Nope. War. And so even like Korea, Vietnam, like you said, like the 90s, and
Vietnam's the most egregious one, because at that point it was just like, okay, well, say you drop out of school at 17, well, your 2 choices are to either fake an injury or go fight in Laos, and those are your 2 choices. Is to
like,
go
why?
to
what do we benefit from that?
And it's like it's not even like it was a worthwhile war. We didn't win Vietnam. We lost. We retreated.
Everyone loses in war, honestly.
Because what happened there was we went there not realizing a farm boy from fucking Kansas isn't going to know how to traverse the thick, swampy forest of Vietnam. They're going to have to jump on them. I remember I read about a trap that they actually did where they would take feces and they would rub it on like sharpened bamboo sticks and they put leaves on top so the soldiers would fall in it. And they wouldn't get killed by the spikes, but the feces on the spikes would get infected into their wounds. Like, they fought so... I wouldn't say dirty because we were invading their land, technically. Even though
They
it's
were
kind
fighting.
of fucked up to say it.
They were fighting like how they were trained to fight, which is just
Yeah.
like
And
Guerrilla warfare. Yeah.
yeah,
and
exactly.
it's like we have to jump on them. We're gonna use it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where after a while we were just like, okay, so what we're gonna do now, since we realize sending 100,000 young men to die for no reason is kind of stupid, we're gonna create a few chemical agents to drop on the forest. So at first I think it was napalm, and that just ended up being all bad because that just burned down a bunch of forests and actually injured a lot of people. And then there's also Agent Orange, which was made to kill like plants. We did a lot of psychological warfare in Vietnam. I don't know if you've read into it, but like what we would do at night was we had loudspeakers outside of their villages where we would play ghostly moans and like people speaking in Vietnamese who were talking like ghosts, because the Vietnamese are very spiritual people, and it actually like freaked a lot of the Vietnamese people out. And the Vietnamese people on their end had Hanoi Hannah, who was a Vietnamese woman who could speak English, and she would basically go over the intercoms and speak over the radio and be like, American whatever, you guys need to get out, and they would feed them like a bunch of propaganda, both sides. It was one of those wars where it was bad on all fronts, and I feel like that's when the world realized wars don't have to be as brutal as they have been. Because that was the last war where it was super brutal. I mean, don't get me wrong, all wars brutal, stuff like Fallujah is super brutal, but Vietnam, I don't think people can comprehend how many young men have been sent out to die. If you're between the ages of 17 and 24 and you lived in the late 60s, early 70s, there's like a solid 20% chance you die in just some swamp.
Oh yeah,
didn't Trump dodge the draft for that war?
Yeah, he hurt his foot.
Yeah,
which one was it?
Vietnam.
It was Vietnam.
Yeah, it was Vietnam. Yeah, bone spurs, and A, that's a fucking lie. But B, I mean, he's not the only one to do it. There
Definitely
are people who
when
rich, but it's like
he mocked like people of war, like actual soldiers. So
he mocked John McCain.
Too much of a coward to go to war, then you shouldn't be talking at all.
He mocked John McCain specifically, which if you don't know John McCain, he was the 2008 presidential nominee for the Republicans. I do have to say, I'm not a Republican. I very much respect John McCain. He seemed like, is he as more small government Republican or is he big government, Coby?
He's more of like a mainstream old school type of Republican like you would see in the 90s. I wouldn't say he's kind of like in the middle. He's not what you would call a populist conservative, which would be Trump. And he's not like a small government libertarian type conservative like Rand Paul. He's more in line with someone like George Bush, like a mainstream run-of-the-mill type conservative.
And like there are plenty of videos I saw. I mean, John McCain passed away a couple years ago, but I saw a video that was in my recommended from like 2007 where they were at a campaign like rally, and this woman got up on stage and was spewing this like propaganda garbage at him, right? Like she was saying like, yeah, she was like, oh yeah, Obama's a terrorist, he's all this, and John McCain, because back then politics wasn't about like instigating information wars on your opponents. He basically told her, yeah, that's not true. Sit down and shut up.
What the lady actually said is, I don't trust him about Obama. And then she said, he's an Arab. That was the thing that and so then he's like, oh, like he's a good, decent family man. We just disagree on politics is what he said. So he stood up for Obama and basically was like, yeah, he's not like a terrorist or an Arab or whatever.
Good man.
Like, I know Obama was like, they were respectful towards each other.
Also, it's just not empirically true. Like he's half black and half white. How is he an Arab? Wait, what?
It makes no sense. I mean, well, because I'm sure he was in some Hope fucking city in like Wyoming where she's maybe seen two black people her entire life. Maybe she doesn't know that there's no different shades of brown.
Trump said he was from Africa, and Africa is Arabs.
Arabs.
Like, I can't believe people are getting dumber over the years, but that's really what it seems like. Like the fact Trump actually thought Ted Cruz, who was born in like the mid 60s, was the Zodiac killer when the Zodiac killings happened in the late 60s.
It's very possible.
Yeah. Okay, but he's just trolling. Like he calls everybody by like nicknames when he trolls them.
Mini Mike.
Mini Mike, yeah.
What's Sleepy Joe?
Sleepy Joe.
That's a fucking good one.
Lion Ted.
His nicknames are good. He's just a fucking dick.
Crooked Hillary.
Oh, how did we get that guy?
He's kind of a roast master. I can't lie.
Wasn't he part of the SNL roast or the Comedy Central roast?
He got roasted.
He got roasted.
He got roasted, and they called his dick little a bunch of times straight to his face. It was the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. But like, I got to make sure that that's true because I kind of want to watch it now with the knowledge we have now.
Gonna watch it. Oh god. He's gonna bring a bunch of like behind the scenes shit that we didn't know about before.
Yeah, he was roasted by Seth MacFarlane and Snoop Dogg. Imagine little did he know 6 years later he'd be the president of the fucking United States.
I wonder if it's gonna be in the year. It's gonna be in the history books.
Like,
I swear he's gonna be the president during that fucking thing too.
I mean, the thing is like Trump's run for president before. 2016 wasn't his first time.
Yeah.
He ran in 2000, I believe. Coby, you might be more versed in that than I am, but I'm pretty sure Trump ran in 2000 as a third-party candidate.
I don't remember. I think he ran once before. I can't remember exactly what year. Or he.
2000.
Yes,
I think
you're right.
Wasn't it in like the 80s?
No, it was in 2000. He ran for the Reform Party.
Party.
And the Reform Party was by I think it was Ross Perot.
Yeah.
And like isn't Ross Perot like the only third party candidate to ever really get on the debate stage in modern memory?
Yes, and he basically was a election spoiler. Essentially, that's what he's known as. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because he pulled away a lot of votes. Same with Ralph Nader. Yeah, Ross Perot. Yeah, like they're pretty. Those are two big instances where the third party candidate like changed the vote. And people also said that about Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, was the reason that Hillary lost.
Fuck Jill Stein.
It's close. It's possible.
It's like no one likes Jill Stein. When it comes to I watched the libertarian debate, and I gotta say, all those guys are fucking nuts, dude. They're weird. Libertarians are fucking wackos, man. Like, I might put the clip here when I edit it, but it was a guy, and he was like, the mediator was like, what do you guys think of people needing a license to drive a car? And the first guy, like a cartoon character, goes, hell no. And he's like, you know, I need a license to drive. Next thing the big government will tell me is I'll need a license to toast in my own damn toaster. And everyone started clapping.
The thing about a libertarian party is it's a constant dick swing of who is the most libertarian. Now, the high end of libertarianism is actually anarchism. If you are purely 100% libertarian, you believe in no government. So the libertarian, they're like... It's a constant competition. So they'll call someone like Rand Paul, who is the most libertarian person in the U.S. Senate. A true quote unquote libertarian will be like, that's not even a libertarian. Rand Paul supports taxes. I don't support taxes.
Like, you know, like the so
it's this constant competition. It's a hipster competition of who is the most. And a lot of hipsters are pure libertarians.
If you're a libertarian, like if you're 100% libertarian, you wouldn't even be running for president. You'd be trying to trying to pull a federal government. You'd be trying to pull a coup d'état against the government, but it's like you can't. That's why you had people like Gary Johnson who didn't even remember Aleppo, and that destroyed his run. Yeah. And also at that libertarian debate, Gary Johnson said he would like to see people get a license to drive, and everyone booed him off stage. That actually happened. Gary Johnson is like the most right-leaning libertarian that's ever run, and he somehow won. Because the other people
he was the most electable and the most mainstream. But that's the thing is the hardcore members of the libertarians will like disown the weak libertarians. Like you support a driver's license? Yeah, that's too
big government.
Big government, right? So it's this constant competition, which I think
you also have those joke candidates like Vernon Supreme. I'm sure you know who that is. He's the guy who he runs, and his main thing is he has a boot that's on his head, and he's like, if I win president, everyone's getting a pony if I win president.
Yeah, the pony, the fucking guy with the pony.
It's right. Like I can't lie, that's the most libertarian guy who's ever run for that seat. It's like, imagine one day in like 50 years after, Donald Trump Jr. has already served out his 2 terms or whatever, and, Biden, disappears 1 month into his presidential run.
The interesting thing about libertarianism, though, is it's kind of like we talked about with Trump and Bernie being on the same side or the opposite side of the same coin, where there's a lot of overlap because they're both populists. They're just one is a right populist and one is a left populist. It's the same thing with libertarians, because a far left libertarian is usually in favor of legalizing all drugs, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and a far right libertarian is the same way for different reasons. So the far right libertarian is the government can't control what you put in your body, and therefore any limitation on drugs or any food of any kind is totally immoral. The left-leaning libertarian will say, well, it's the drug war leads to like mass incarceration and disparate targeting of minorities in prison and those types of things. So they also favor full legalization. And then I'm kind of sitting here like legalizing cocaine and meth seems kind of crazy to me. But you see, both conservatives and libertarians having a totally different view on it, which is kind of interesting.
Which, if you ever get a chance to watch a libertarian debate, they are some of the most interesting debates you can have, because, one day you watch like the Democratic debate that happened earlier on, I think last year, where everyone basically had the same fucking opinion on everything and they didn't have anything to argue over.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you go to a libertarian debate, one guy will be like, yeah, I want drugs to be legalized. And the other one will be like, I want them to be legalized, but for these reasons instead of the reasons you listed, or a license needs to be outlawed because, if it's outlawed, a bunch of this stuff will happen. The other side will be like, well, what if all this stuff happens when we, decriminalize it or whatever it is? And like, it's a slippery slope of what these people believe, because we don't live in a two-party system. You can't just be you can be more than a Democrat or a Republican. You can be whatever the fuck the Reform Party is, whatever the fuck Ross Perot is. I think he was a libertarian, but what was Ross Perot?
I don't know. I know Ralph Nader was independent.
Oh, actually, fun fact: Roger Stone was the key. He was the key person. He was the director of the Trump 2000 campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is, I didn't know that they went that far back. I know he recently got his boy out of jail though. Yeah. Which is interesting. That's also one of those things where it's like, at what point is the president kind of using too much of his power for his own personal gain?
Ross Perot was an independent.
He was an independent?
This time seemed like, I don't know why, like, wasn't he the person that he was getting out of jail, like, lied in
yeah,
court?
He lied under oath, is what they found out about him.
So weird. And like it was, they were just trying to. I don't know. I think Trump was like, because the Dems, Dems hoax.
Ross Perot died last year. Guess how much money he was worth. Let me give you his political background first. He was an independent before '95. He formed his own party, the Reform Party, from '95 to 2000, which is the one Trump ran under. Then he was a Republican from 2000 to 2019. Guess how much money this man's worth?
$50 million.
$4.1 billion.
That's like around Trump's net worth. That's about the same.
It's more than Trump's net worth, because Trump's actually lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, that we know of.
Yeah, we know of. Yeah, he's probably.
It could be an off. Yeah, Trump's only worth about 2.1 billion, and he isn't even keeping. So what's that?
Why was that other guy so much or worth so much?
Well, because he probably played the political system like everyone else does. I mean.
Why not? I gotta get
most people in Congress are worth millions.
He said, "I gotta get into politics." Is that what you said?
And like,
I'm gonna run shit, bro. I'm gonna be fucking.
Oh, like, I'm gonna look up RBJ or RBG's net worth real quick. Ruth
There's
Bader.
No way it's high. She's a judge.
She's worth $4 million. So you take someone like that, nothing. Where that's nothing. And she's just doing her job and chilling. Meanwhile, she's one of the most important people in the government. Versus someone in Congress who just like a Mitt Romney or whoever. Mitt Romney is worth like a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
So much.
And it's like, isn't Mitt Romney the only one who's actually outspoken against the president?
Yeah. He's pretty much the only Republican.
I think so. Yeah, no, he's the only Republican to ever vote
I just remember
his own party.
I remember the one picture where he was at dinner with Trump, and Trump was looking back like a fucking demon. Like they were just like shrouded in red and shit. And he's just like smiling, thumbs up with Mitt Romney's looking all depressed.
Mitt Romney is the only person in history to vote against their own party in terms of an impeachment, because the impeachment trial, there was only one Republican vote that voted for impeaching the president, and it was Mitt Romney. Meanwhile, back when Clinton was impeached, every Democrat said to keep him. Back when Nixon was going to get impeached, I would have assumed it would have been the same thing. I'm trying to remember who else got impeached. It was someone a long, long time ago that we really don't have to worry about. But didn't Clinton get impeached for adultery? Isn't that what happened there? Or was it
Bill Clinton?
For that? Yeah, didn't Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton was impeached for lying under oath.
He lied about the adultery, right?
When he was asked if he had a relationship with Monica Lewinsky, he said no.
Did not have sexual relations with that young lady.
Correct. And then it was like, oh shit, Bill, yes you did. And then as soon as they figured that out, they said, hey homeboy, you just lied under oath. What's up with that? And it's kind of weird how that works, because he kind of got away with it and he didn't really get in trouble for lying under oath. But typically that's like a huge felony, and it's like I forget what, like subterfuge of the US or whatever.
It's because everyone who's been impeached in modern history has actually been pardoned by the next active president.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened with Nixon. Nixon would have been fucking thrown in jail, lock and key, thrown away, because Watergate was such a huge scandal. It changed the landscape of politics, because Richard Nixon was such a little bitch boy. He didn't have enough confidence that he would win the election. Fuck Richard Nixon. Tricky Dick is a bitch. He is. I mean, Richard Nixon's one of the biggest joke presidents that have ever existed in the history of this country. And he had no spine.
Alive so kind of recently. He died right before we were born, 1994.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It feels like forever ago, but he like, I don't know.
I mean, didn't Ronald Reagan only die in 2005?
Yeah, he did. I know. Isn't that crazy?
Which is kind of crazy to think about, because he was president in his 70s, and that was during the 80s. No,
did
HW. HW died.
HW.
Because I remember everything was half-mast, because he's done. Day of mourning.
Ronald Reagan died in 2004, so that's not that long ago.
2004. Old Jimmy Carter is still alive for some fucking reason.
Oh, that's right. Jimmy Carter is still alive.
Jimmy Carter's like 93 years old. Yeah, Jimmy Carter's 93, I think.
Wow. Oh yeah, I forgot he's still alive too.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Carter is one of those presidents where he didn't do anything in office.
Right.
He only served for one term. He wasn't bad. He wasn't good. He just kind of existed.
Right.
So, like, no one hates him. No one loves him. I don't even think anyone remembers when he was president. That's how unremarkable his career
he just did one term. We had the same birthday. I just saw that, October 1st. How about that?
Oh, nice.
But John F. Kennedy was
he died
an objectively pretty good president, honestly.
I think he's the last great American president we've had. Like, absolutely 100% down the line, great.
He really cared a lot. I remember after the Bay of Pigs, there's this famous story where the Bay of Pigs was like a failed invasion, and the Bay of Pigs, of course, it had no American troops. It was Cuban troops fighting a Cuban insurgency, and it was organized by the U.S. And and then once it failed and everyone captured, like he wept for hours and just cried, because he knew that those people that he ultimately sent in were going to be tortured and killed and all of that. So he was a president that was very, very I guess kind of caring in that way. And he was very much revered in that way, not just as a president, but also as like a pop culture figure, almost like a celebrity in a way. I wouldn't say it was really in a bad way, but certainly one of the very interesting things is that debate in 1960 between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon was the first televised debate ever. And first time a debate was ever televised. And it was interesting. On radio, people that listen to the debate, it's very famous. I've listened to it many, many times. And people that listened to the debate on radio that were polled said that Richard Nixon won the debate. People on television said that JFK won the debate because JFK had makeup. He's younger. He's an attractive guy. Could be like a movie star type model type of guy. He was 35 years old when he was running for president, the youngest president ever. Maybe not 35. He was like late in his 30s, just barely legal to be president. And so he looked great on TV. And people said, because he looked so much better than Richard Nixon, this old kind of disheveled old man, people that watched on TV said that he won. And that's just a great example of how TV revolutionized politics, where it became more about your appearance and how you look. That's one of the big things for Bernie. Is Bernie does not look presidential. He a liberal commentator named Jimmy Dore, this YouTuber, he's very, very liberal, and he actually likes Bernie, but he calls him a Batman villain because he's doing an interview with Joe Biden, and you see Bernie in the back, he's like this. He's slouched over and he's looking at the camera. He has horrible posture. And then Joe Biden, even though he's super old, he has makeup all done. The lighting is perfect. He's sitting up like this, perfect posture, looking into the camera like a politician. That's one of the things that really hurt Bernie, in my opinion, is that it's that same phenomenon of like the radio versus TV, and which politicians play better on which platform. But ultimately it's because he looked like a goddamn movie star, and people are like, wow, he's kind of hot, I'll vote for him. They're like, it's just,
oh yeah, they definitely said the same thing about Biden too.
Right,
he was kind of hot, I can't lie, that's why I voted for him. But like the thing with JFK is like, yeah, when they televised that debate, you have to think about it. JFK is like a 6 foot tall, good looking man in his late 30s, early 40s, looked great. And then you have Richard Nixon, who's probably in his late 50s, early 60s, horrible posture, greasy ass face, receding hairline, little dick, no reason to live, right?
No reason to live.
I can't tell you how much I despise Richard Nixon. He is the antithesis to what a good American politician
your hatred
is.
Of Richard Nixon is so amusing to me.
And that's like half the reason I don't like Roger Stone, is because Roger Stone's the only person in America who has a huge Richard Nixon tattoo on his back.
No, what the fuck? What? Wait, whoa, hold up. Why would you get a Richard Nixon tattoo?
Look up Roger Stone back tattoo.
I don't want to look up I'm not gonna look at his back tattoo of Richard Nixon.
Coby, I'm telling you right now, you need to look this up.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting, Dustin.
And that's one of the reasons I just fucking hate Roger Stone, because anyone
I was fanboy to Richard Nixon, being a big Chris Brown fan and getting a Chris Brown tattoo. And then
it's basically the same thing.
It's kind of the same thing. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry, Dustin, go.
But like, imagine you're in politics and like, that's like me getting a tattoo of fucking, I don't know, Joe Blow down the street. There's no difference between your neighbor and Richard Nixon, because they both did the same amount of political good, in my opinion. Richard Nixon, he makes me so mad. It's just the way he looks, it's the way he talks, it's the way he acts, it's that stupid little fucking peace symbol he did when he walked down Air Force One. I don't know. I do not like Richard Nixon. It's the only
I highly recommend you guys go back and listen to their debate in 1960. Just listen to it and like listen where both parties were at the time. It's very, very interesting. Like, it's very interesting to think what was a big issue, because the debate and what they debate in this year between Trump and Biden, like, and what they're going to be talking about is so much different. In that debate, their level of obsession with like Russia and the Cold War was like what we are talking about with coronavirus or one of these types of things. It was like the main thing on their mind, you know? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting to go back and rewatch and see like where each party stood on each issue and what was like the main issue that Americans were worried about and concerned about. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I think the only reason we look at JFK, the reason we do, is because he's such a storied and famed president, which unfortunately a lot of that comes from his assassination in 1963.
Right.
And how kind of sketchy that whole ordeal was, because it was kind of fucking sketchy if you think about it.
Oh yeah.
If you guys haven't looked anything up, there's a great thing on YouTube about it, by BuzzFeed. It's BuzzFeed Unsolved. Now, hear me out. BuzzFeed fucking sucks, right?
Cringe.
BuzzFeed Unsolved is an entirely different sector of BuzzFeed. Go check out their series. Really good. They give a lot of the facts. They talk about, you know, the grassy knoll theory or the umbrella man theory and all these things, because you kind of can't hit the angles that he hit, man.
Dude, don't get me started on this. I know every single detail to be known about the situation. I know the date, time, what floor Lee Harvey Oswald was on, like the everything.
What
I
street
know.
were they on?
I don't. Dealey Plaza is the name of the area. I don't know the street.
Fun fact: I stood exactly where Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in at on Air Force One.
Oh, that's cool.
I've been to his Air Force One.
Really? Oh, that's
multiple
cool.
times. I actually see it. I actually see it every day.
Kobe just reminded me of Deal from King of the Hill, bro. I'm sorry. Because that one character is obsessed with like the JFK, like
oh yeah,
because like the JFK assassination.
I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm into it. I like it.
It's one of those things where it's very likely that there was something sketchy about it. Versus you have those quacks who think like 9/11 was a hologram or something.
Oh yeah, the planes are CGI.
No, like a lot of people thought 9/11 was like super high tech like holograms, and it's like, dog, we can't even make Tupac look good.
So you're saying you don't believe that?
No. They're like the ones who I think when
holographic, bro, and that the bombs were obviously put there to begin with.
Or like the one where it's like when the tower collapsed, you could see like a devil with wings pop out of the smoke or something, and it's like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Man, I was like, what the fuck?
Meanwhile, in the 60s, conspiracy theories were like, oh, what if Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't alone? Like,
yeah, right.
What if Jack Ruby was a mob guy and he didn't want Lee Harvey to squeal? It's as simple as that. Like,
I think JFK was in the mob when he was like 13. Like he snuck out and hung out with the Italian mob, or the because he's like an Irish Catholic guy, so he's kind of like my from where my people are from or whatever. Because he's like an Irish Italian like Catholic type of guy. So I think that he was just a mobster, and Ruby was trying to get his money back, and yeah.
Bada bing, bada boom. You know how
bada bing, bada boom, and he got bada bing.
But like, the Kennedy family is very interesting if you guys haven't read about it, with things like the Rosemary Kennedy situation or like Bobby Kennedy getting assassinated. Because Bobby Kennedy was actually going to be president. He had a very good chance of winning that presidency.
Yep.
Because JFK was in such high regard, and Bobby was basically
they
JFK
fucking
Jr.
crossed somebody, man. Those Kennedy, they crossed someone. They crossed the wrong motherfuckers.
There's a Kennedy curse for sure. I mean, have you guys ever heard about Rosemary Kennedy?
Yeah. No. I think like a little bit. Was that recent?
No, she only died about 15 years ago. But what happened with her basically was her parents, which I think were JFK's parents. I might correct myself if I'm wrong. Probably not, because I really won't pay attention to editing this. But basically what happened was their parents, she was like a 14-year-old girl, and she was very rebellious, right? So in the early like 1930s, 1940s, they had her lobotomized.
Oh,
which,
no.
If you don't know what that is, that's basically sticking something in someone's nose to the point where it hits their brain and hitting it with a hammer to kind of like separate the part of the brain. It's archaic, and it doesn't happen anymore because it fucked up so many people in terms of their mental state. But she lived like that for like 60, 70 years. And she had the cognitive like mindset of like a 5-year-old.
Right.
And she died in like 2005. And the last Kennedy I know of that died was like Ted Kennedy. He only died like 3 years ago.
There was another something with a Kennedy recently that I saw in the news.
Oh no, it was like John Kennedy Jr.'s daughter died, right? Didn't she go missing at a lake with her son or something?
Yeah, it's the Kennedy curse. It's real.
Yeah.
That was somebody Joe no, I don't know.
It's like John Kennedy Jr.'s daughter or something.
Gene Kennedy Smith?
Because also JFK Jr. died in a plane crash outside of Martha's Vineyard, which is also kind of sketchy. It's like, and like he's the one that's famous for being well known for I think it was Jackie telling him to salute at the funeral.
That's what it is.
I don't know if
it was the last it was the last surviving sibling of JFK died.
Yeah, Ted.
No, a week ago. It's Gene Kennedy Smith.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, wow. It's the last sibling.
Oh wow! You know,
that's sad. Well, on that note,
he survived until 92, so pretty good life.
All right, is this where we're wrapping up, Coby?
Yeah, we can wrap up
for sure.
Thank you guys all for tuning in, and as I said at the top of the podcast, make sure you subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell. Every single Sunday we'll be back here. And we typically upload around Sunday night, so it might be better you to catch in the morning, Monday morning if you're in Europe or what have you. But definitely make sure you're subscribed and turn that notification bell on. We are getting close to 1,000 subs, and a lot of great things happening in the podcast. Dustin and I were just talking earlier today, getting us onto Spotify, getting us onto Apple Podcasts, potentially, getting some brand deals so we can buy some new graphics and all that. I think that would be a lot of fun. So a lot of great stuff coming down the pike with the podcast. And of course, make sure that you are staying tuned to all of it every Sunday night. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.